Today we're losing half our rocket on liftoff, we live the litho-breaking lifestyle, we do some unintended sandblasting, we find out that things won't fit, and we still pull off building something like this. Hello everybody, and welcome. If you haven't lived under a rock and are a space things fan, you might have heard of Ignition, the event where NASA was talking about doing a permanent moon base and their plans for doing so. And it will all rely on a lot of deliveries of stuff to the moon, like modular habitats, rovers, and the like. So I thought, let's project that onto Kerbal space program. You know, the sensible thing would be to have singular modules, build a very sensible lift vehicle, and send a lot of launches to the moon, and then build the base in pieces over there over time. And is that what we did here? Nope, on this channel we don't do the sensible thing. Yes, we're doing a massive launch with everything we can cram into one singular fairing, and we're immediately paying the price for that. And yes, this is a typical old school Shadow Zone video, so if you enjoy some very complex craft building in Kerbal Space Program and enjoying some sort of sci-fi, sort of realistic space game simulation stuff, maybe you should subscribe to this channel so you don't miss anything about that. And if you've joined this channel ever since I do my updates on Kit and Space Agency, you can be sure once I can build something like this over there, I will. And you can see here that we can still ascend with half of a booster. Yeah, I totally overbuilt this. And after stage separation, we were sort of fine, but I was aware that we would not ascend as high as I initially planned. So we would have to spend some fuel of my, well, actually the payload, the interplanetary transfer stage, to get to our destination. And yes, I said interplanetary transfer. Why just go to the moon when we can go to a different planet? Am I right? And yes, you can see here that I crammed a lot more than just one module into the payload fairing. And you can also see that we would have enough Delta V to make the trip to Duna and back, but I really wanted to do that right. Again! Yes, so we did the entire launch again. This time I didn't forget the launch clamps, and lo and behold, the booster did not collapse on liftoff. So that's an improvement. You might have also seen that some kind of shroud was sticking to one of the engines of my transfer stage, and I also didn't like the look of that, so that was another reason why I decided to do this launch again. And yes, I'm going to skim over this a little bit quicker than before. So while we are watching this launch, maybe tell me in the comments, what do you think about NASA's new plan for the moon? So Artemis Mission 20 and ongoing, where they will maybe finally do a moon base and maybe do a permanent one at that. So the interesting thing is getting stuff there. Okay, we did that before, and there is also a lot of private companies that have done some moon missions. And some of them were successful, some of them not so much. But getting stuff to the moon, it has been done. The problem that I see, or like the complexity that I see with NASA's Ignition plan and building a permanent station on the moon, on the surface of the moon, is you're going to need a lot of transfer between orbit and the surface. So even in this mission where I did like just a single launch, well, single launch with this setup, and then did a lot of transfer between surface and orbit. Yeah, I was searching for the word orbit, imagine that. And even then I realized this is not easy, and this requires a lot of moving parts coming together in the right way. And as you've seen from the teaser to this video, not everything is going to go the right way. So far, it kind of is, so we've undocked our first module and we decided on a landing place. I wanted to have a spot that's pretty close to sea level, so I decided on this nice little, well, maybe a former river delta or like an estuary or whatever you want to call it. Basically, the idea was that it is about as flat as we can get, and we have a lot of height to play with, so we don't land on like a plateau or something that's like 3,000 meters above sea level. So the parachutes will work, because yes, this is going to need parachutes. As you can see, it's tipping over due to aerodynamics, and we're going to need the parachutes mostly to get it upright before landing propulsively. So yes, there's the parachutes working, and also everything flopping around, because this particular module has a trick up its sleeve that we're going to look at a little bit later. And yes, with the way overpowered vector engines, we're getting this down. And yeah, after disconnecting it, I needed to do something with action groups, so I would control it the right way up, because for some reason it controlled it from the docking port downwards as soon as I disengaged, which was not nice. Anyway, our first module is down, so the foundation for our base is laying. So let's continue. And of course, as is kind of my curse, we have a lot of nighttime rendezvous here, but we were already pretty close to the sunrise, or the orbit coming back into view of the sun. Could you still call it a sunrise? Because it's not really synchronized with the movement of the Earth. Anyway, or the planet in this case, which is Duna, the Mars analog for Kerbal Space Program. And speaking of Kerbal, this is our brave engineer, and he has to repack the parachutes so we can reuse this again. We also had to do some refueling. There's no footage for that here, but you'll see that later. And we also carry now a weird vehicle. Yes, it's a rover, and we're going to need that for final assembly of our base. Now for one of the other tricky parts, which is getting back to the initial module. So we really need to do a pinpoint landing, which is also why the lander is way overpowered with delta V, and also in regards to the thrust-to-weight ratio. So the idea is to kind of X marks the spot, so we need to get the X over the target, and then hope that we get close to it, that the rover does not have to travel hours to get there. And we can do some fine-tuning while descending. Fine-tuning by trying to move the retrograde marker over the target. And here, yeah, I kind of messed up switching targets, and yeah, that could have ended bad, or maybe it will end bad. But first, let's get this lander up into orbit and then look at the damage that we just did. A look at the moon in the background. This moon is called Ike, if you don't know that yet. And here a little bit of a beauty shot of us reaching orbit, or at least a high enough altitude that I have enough time to look at the surface. And you can see here my initial loading it up, and we got so lucky with this one. If that would have ended any other way, up or down, I would have had to do the entire descent again, and that would have been quite tedious, because that would not have been the only time that I had to do it again. Alright, so as you have guessed, we are going to connect these base pieces together, and for that we're using the robotic parts. And here we go, we have the first two parts aligned. We're pulling up the wheels, so everything is just one vehicle, so we can find it easier later. Back in orbit, we're going to grab another module. So we have sort of our first module, which is what I call the command and control module. You'll see why it's called the control module later. We just refueled, as I mentioned earlier. And now we're going to take care of power. This is sort of the power brick, and you'll see why a little bit later. Everything, as you can see, is kind of normed to a specific size and proportion. And that's why everything fits really easily together. And once again, we kind of landed close to where we wanted to go. Well, we did not completely land yet. And yeah, I mentioned not everything is going well, didn't I? Again. Okay, and immediately with this here, I did the next descent wrong again. I landed way too far and then tried to move the vehicle closer and... Yep. Again. Yes, we had to do that again, but this time it worked and we've landed rather close to our main base, which is nice. And then we can enjoy some sunrise, which came up over the mountains and then get back up into orbit and back up to the ship. So this is going to repeat 9 times, but there are, as you have seen, some surprises along the way. So time to get that first power module. Okay, come on, little rover. As usual, unfortunately, Kerbal Space Program wheels are skidding all over the place. So if you're on an inclination like here, it will not hold. There is basically almost no grip. It will slide down gradually over time. So you kind of have to guesstimate where you want to point that, because it will not end up there where you think. Speaking of it does not end up where you think, this does not fit because I made the rover too long, but with a little bit of a bump. As you've heard, the docking port engaged. It still worked. Yeah. I don't think that was a NASA-approved docking maneuver, so I don't think we're going to see that on the lunar surface. But hey, it works in Kerbal Space Program, so it can't be wrong. And I've only shown you that previous scene because that sunrise was just so beautiful with all the visual mods installed that I have here. If you haven't watched it, I have my kind of current most essential visual mods video that I did a couple of weeks ago. I'll link that up there and in the description. And we're going to deliver our second power module, because why just one when you can have 2? Alright, again rising up into the sky and leaving it there. Speaking of power, the question is, how would you power such a base in a real-life scenario? So there's the option for solar panels, there are radiothermal generators, and there's also the potential to have an actual nuclear reactor on the surface of your base. Well, or surface of your moon or planet rather, for your base. So the latter one has, of course, a lot of complications that you would have to deal with and some probably regulatory hurdles that you have to overcome. But it would have the advantage over something like solar or maybe wind on a planet with atmosphere, that you're not dependent on the environment. Like a nuclear reactor runs all night long, so you don't care if the sun is up or not. Or on Mars, you don't care if a sandstorm blows dust all over your solar panels, right? Okay, everything is in place, or at least the power modules are in place, and then we're going to attach our first habitation module. And with that, with a control module, a power module, and a habitation module, just 3 modules would have been enough for like a minimum base setup where you could have like a permanent installation, or at least an installation for some time, at least in my mind, in this Kerbal universe. Interestingly, these hab modules are the heaviest ones of all of those that I made for this video, or at least for this type of base. In theory, you could do also like a second story, a second floor building with a docking port at the bottom. I haven't bothered doing that because then I would have had to build a crane, and I was too busy bumping my habitation module to make it fit. Since it is the heaviest, it was the hardest to bump into place, but yes, as you just heard, we managed to do that as well. So here we are. Our base can get operational. And yes, our power bricks are extending their solar panels. I did not rely on any nuclear stuff or any other power generation like fuel cells. I rely for this on solar panels and on batteries, of which there are a bunch in these power modules. And of course, we need some control to speak with our home planet or with craft in orbit or to control remote probes. And that's what this antenna is for. Right, so we could call it quits, but we don't, because we still have a couple of more modules over here. 9 in total, so we have 2 power modules, the connector module, then the hab module and the control module, so we are at 5 at the moment. And the best one is the final one, which I haven't talked about yet, but you'll see it later on, don't you worry. But in the meantime, we have to attach another one of these junctions, which is going to be a lot easier than all the other ones because it's the lightest one. It does not weigh anything. Well, it weighs something, but it's compared to the other things that have some payload inside, some habitation modules, etc. This is just some tubes with docking ports. And since we're attaching it lengthwise, it's a lot easier and we don't have to bump anything. All right, just a couple more. We only have 2 left. So here we go. We're going to grab our habitation module, and then I said I saved the best for last. So we have to get that hab module down first, which is also going to take a lot more fuel than the other ones since it's the heaviest. And you might have noticed I have some landing gear on this lifter module or on this space tug, whatever you want to call it, but I don't use them because I don't want to land this. I want to get this back to Kerbal. But in theory, it could land and be refilled from like a local ore refining or ISRU facility. Alright, here we go. Penultimate module, once again, a small junction module, and this is going to be just a quick one where I just skim over it, because you've seen this before. Except this particular sunrise, you haven't seen that before, and it was rather pretty. I enjoyed that. Okay, getting it into place, and immediately another problem. I should not have extended the solar modules before I was finished with the base. But this was easy to put into place since the junctions are so light. And now that we have our final module, we can now carry our engineer also down to the surface, who is inside that module, by the way. So we need to take special care to not crash. Look at those clouds. Not anymore, now look at that sunrise. Yes, we're going to do the nosedive again until the parachutes save us. And you might have taken a glimpse of what's inside that rover, because everything is flopping around. Thanks Kerbal Space Program joints for being so wobbly. Alright, we've touched that down, and then we're going to get this thing back into orbit, because as I mentioned before, I want to get that back. And then we're going to grab this final module, and you might have noticed it has only one docking port on the long axis. As you can see here, on this side, there isn't one, and there is a very good reason for that, which you're going to see in just a few moments. And here, that was the most perfect unplanned docking ever, because I just released it and it fell into place. And speaking of falling, the door is falling and revealing our rover garage. Yes, I mentioned before that the astronauts for the Artemis missions, or the Artemis moon base, or whatever they want to call it, ignition base, I don't know, they are going to need some rovers to get around on the surface. So far, I think the plan is to just deliver the rovers there and then land the humans later and then drive around and then leave the rover there and use it at a later time when another crew comes. But that does not have any style, does it? And also, you would want to have a little garage for your vehicle, don't you? So yes, I built a rover garage and not just a rover, because We do want to have some style on this channel. Okay, getting back in there, so how do I attach it? With these robotic parts that move the docking port a little bit upwards so it grabs and connects to the vehicle, and this is also the reason why it flops around. Right, so this is our surface base so far, and it looks rather well and is in perfect condition for operations. What's not in perfect condition is the fitment of the engine. I have no idea why this was able to undock, but I cannot dock it anymore because the nozzles of the vector engines are in the way. So I had to dock it where the lifter rover was, which caused a little bit of a alignment issue with the center of mass. So I had to run the engines at like 50% or 30% of their maximum throttle. But it still worked out and we got our encounter with our home planet of Kerbal. Goodbye Duna, goodbye surface base. And after a tedious long journey through a boring vast emptiness of space, which we gladly skipped over with time warp, a luxury real astronauts will not have, we are back where we started, and fortunately we have of course enough delta V to make our circularization burn even without any aerobraking maneuver, which this vehicle probably would not survive because it's not designed for it. And with this, the official mission is now over, and we could retrofit this with an extension on top of the docking port so we can add the tug up there and some new modules and expand this, for instance, to this, a fully equipped Duna surface base with, as I mentioned, the power modules, the command module. You can see on the right hand side a ore refinery module, so this has an ISRU unit and a storage facility for ore and radiators and drills, and there is also some storage modules for fuel, like liquid fuel and oxidizer, and also monopropellant. And in honor of the base from For All Mankind on Mars, I kind of thought I should name this Happy Valley, since it's also inside a valley. And the only reason is because I really like the name Happy Valley. Nothing really happy about it. What I'm happy about is all the people on Patreon who support what I do here on this channel. And if you're interested in also helping me out, check out the links in the description below. Patreon members get early access to videos, and also on a higher tiers, your name was mentioned over there on the right hand side. Thank you as always for your support. Me, I'm going to take a ride on the surface of Duna and enjoy the view. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel for more and follow me on my social thingies. The links are in the description. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.